Alright, to answer this question, we've got to define what Roman is. Is it someone who originates from the city of Rome, or is it wider, like the notion of Roman citizenship? I think since we're talking about an empire that exists after Rome actually fell out of the hands of its own empire, it has to have a wider definition. So, to define being Roman, let's go back a couple of hundred years before the distinction between the Eastern and Western empires. The year is 212 AD, and an edict has just been passed called the Edict of Caracalla. This basically grants Roman citizenship to all freeborn peoples of the Roman Empire. So now we can safely say that the free people that inhabited the Byzantine Empire when it became distinct from the wider Roman Empire are definitely descendants of people who held Roman citizenship. And actually, before we get any further, I want to address the term Byzantine Empire. The people who lived in the Byzantine Empire would not actually have called themselves Byzantines. Instead, they considered themselves Romans and part of the Roman Empire itself. The term Byzantine Empire was created by historians later on to distinguish the Eastern Roman Empire from the previous unified Roman Empire. But the fact that this distinction was made by historians doesn't mean that they were still culturally identical to the upper echelons of the society that existed at the time of the unified empire. But it certainly shows that they were in many ways related, or at least a later iteration of those same people. But that begs the question, what differences actually existed between the previous Roman culture and what historians might call Byzantine culture? Well, the glaringly obvious distinction is the language spoken. In the later Eastern Roman Empire, Greek was the language spoken by the emperor and his court. But Greek was also the language that was most widely spoken in these same provinces at the time of the unified empire. And if these same Greek-speaking people were granted Roman citizenship, despite this difference in language, then why would they be any less Roman than the Latin speakers who were also granted Roman citizenship at the same time? Another difference would be religious. By the time the Roman Empire split into two halves, it was Christian. When the Western Roman Empire withered away, it followed a different religious path than its Eastern counterpart, being that of the Patriarch of Rome and the foundations of Catholicism. The Eastern Roman Empire's version of Christianity eventually morphed into Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And I'd actually argue that this version of Christianity is closer to what the late unified Roman Empire would have practiced, though of course they're not exactly the same. They still followed a system of the Pentarchy, though of course many of the seats of the patriarchs were lost following the Arab invasions of the Mashriq and Egyptian regions. So maybe religion was less of a difference and more of a marker of the continuation of Roman-style Christianity into the later form of the Eastern Roman Empire. I also think it would be a sin not to mention Justinian here. He was perhaps the greatest emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, maybe the best emperor they would ever have. But the most important piece of evidence we can take from his reign was his ambition. He wanted to reconquer the provinces of the Roman Empire and reunify it. So it started with the conquest of North Africa, which he delegated to his amazing general Belisarius. Once Belisarius had reconquered North Africa from the Vandals, Justinian instructed him to reconquer Italy. This was a fierce war that would actually ruin the Italian peninsula more than the fall of Rome ever could, but that's a story for another time. The main point to be made here is that Justinian's ambition was Roman in nature. He wanted to reforge an empire that he believed his ancestors had once ruled over, and he believed himself to be a Roman descendant whose responsibility it was to restore Roman rule to its long-lost provinces. And that's a pretty Roman characteristic, I'd say. So were the Byzantines Roman? I'd say so, yeah. Culturally, though there were some distinctions that could be argued to make the Byzantines different from the Romans, I believe that the fact they were descended from the same people that had been granted Roman citizenship makes them pretty Roman. Once you add on the fact that those ancestors also spoke Greek at the time they were given citizenship, there's not much one could use to argue that they weren't culturally Roman. Theologically, Eastern Orthodoxy was closer to the system of patriarchates that existed at the time of the unified Roman Empire than any other branch of Christianity. And there was still a Roman ambition to reunite the empire that burned fiercely in the Eastern Romans, and it shows that they very much considered themselves Roman. So if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to stay up to date with content, and I will see you in the next one.